I am really delighted to have you with us tonight. This is going to be a wonderful presentation by Lennart Claassen of Friendly Flock. The topic is freeing the potential of nature with herded livestock. And freeing the potential of nature is our Lennart's statement of purpose in his holistic context. So it's the heart and soul of what he's doing in this lifetime on this planet. It's just so exciting. I got to meet Lennart in 2018 when he came to Cork in Ireland, and we did our very first training in Ireland. And Christopher got to meet him in 2017 at some training in London. So he's come to both the UK and Ireland for holistic management training. Lennart grew up in Germany, but he's lived in France for a long time. And you can see this gorgeous part of South Central France where he lives. And he's going to tell you more about that. And I'm just so delighted to have you and Lennart here. And I'm going to turn it over to Lennart. And he's going to get his PowerPoint up. And meanwhile, I just want you to, as questions come up, please type them in the chat. And if there's something relevant that we need to get an answer straight away, I will interrupt Lennart. Otherwise, I'll hold the questions till the end. And he's planning to speak maybe 40 minutes or so, and then we'll have maybe 20 minutes at the end for questions. So over to you, Lennart.
Thank you, Sheila. Thank you for this introduction, and thank you for letting me be here, and thank you for everyone for coming, for being interested in our story, in our experiments, or in our way of doing. So yes, so the theme of today is freeing the potential of nature, which is our mission, or my mission, or not just my mission, it's the mission of Friendly Flock, so me and my partner. And yes, so as Sheila told you already, we are in the south central France. But before that, so what we discussed today, we have three main topics. First, I'll discuss a little bit about the story of a little bit of the history of the land we are managing. Then our strategies, the strategies that we use or we take to try to regenerate the land and to free the potential. And then signs of change and also challenges that we've been seeing in this first year. If I have any internet problems, stop me. And so.
Yeah, I'm just going to have everyone turn off their webcam, and that will help. Keep going, Lennart. We're hearing you fine.
Perfect. So the story of land degradation in the Cévennes in south of France. So here you can see a quite dramatic picture of recent floodings. And there are a lot of floodings in the past years. Even this year, there was a flooding. So every year, there's somehow a flooding right now. So because the soil isn't, as you can see, the water is brown, because there's just so much soil washing away, and there's no more organic matter on the soils to hold that. So water cycles are completely down in this area. So we are in the Cévennes. It's we manage about 600 hectares, and it's in south central France. If you want to situate it on the map, it's 1 hour north of Montpellier, and it's in French it's called Massif Central. Donc Massif, it's the mountain range, and Central is central. It's not very high altitude. It's about 400 is where we live in the valleys, and then it can go up to 1,600 meters. We have at the moment about 180 sheep, 15 goats, and a cow or a calf, more, not a cow yet. And so this is our herd we are managing. And for the climate, it's Mediterranean mountain climate. So to give you an idea, it's dry in summer, and it's it's very wet it can be wet in spring, and it can be wet in so there can be a quite good amount of rain in autumn and a bit of rain in winter. So now we go on to the brittleness scale. So we are situated in this brittleness scale in the middle. So it can go from 4 to 6 depending on year. So but we're very much in the middle. So but I've observed some things. So when you see the picture on the left, you might think that it's very non-brittle. So because you can see a lot of rose bushes, brush coming up, and you've also got a lot of trees, and it's getting quite forestry very quickly. So you might think it's very non-brittle, but then you the right, this is on a land that hasn't been grazed for 30 or 20 years, and you can see slightly oxidizing plants. So it's grayish underneath here. That means that the biology isn't working very well, and that it's oxidizing and not degrading biologically. So more brittle environments. So it's and what I've found is that it's I don't know if you can say micro or macro brittleness, but in a way it's macro brittleness because it's like in the middle. But then you can get environments where it's less brittle because the soil is holding more moisture, because there are a lot of there are some springs, and the moisture is ongoing. Even if it's not raining, there is moisture in the soil, there is moisture somewhere around, and so the environment tends to be less brittle, or at least this micro environment.
Yeah, Lennart, you could call that a microclimate.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
And in some areas, which are, for example, these pictures are taken maybe 15 meters apart. So 15 meters here, it's like very brush kind of things, and then you go a bit more up, and then there's no more moisture in the soil. The soil can't hold any more water, and the biology isn't working anymore. So the decomposition doesn't work. So this is why you actually need grazing animals on this land to stimulate this biological decomposition, even if it can tend to be less brittle. So the soil type here, just to give you a bit of context, in this type, is very sandy soils with a very acid pH, I guess because of degradation as well. But there's not a lot of calcium in the soil. This one is I did 3 Haney tests on our soils, and here you can see our organic matter in those 3 fields, and the CO2 is the respiration. I don't know if you've heard of Haney tests before, but the respiration is the CO2 that is going out of the soil in 24 hours. So as you can see, it's I did the testing in spring to give you a bit of context. So the respiration should be very high, and it's not very high, especially here. It's quite low. It's very low. So it's not very good. It's not working very well. It should be around 500, even more. And O2C is the carbon, so not the stable carbon, but the carbon that's extracted with water. So this is the food for the microbes. And it's interesting, as you can see, where there's more activity, there's less food. And in this field, he's been haying a lot. This means that there's not a lot of food left for the microbes. So it's the most active field, but there's the less feed because it's not the farmer where we took it over, he hasn't been feeding the biology. So this is really something you can see here. This is very interesting because the history, now we're going a bit on the history of the land. I gave you a bit of context, and now we're looking at the history. So this is a picture of where I'm managing. So this is the field I was talking about here. If you can see my mouth, this is the field where I took the Haney test, and here as well. So this is all the land I'm managing, but it's 50 years ago, and now you can see. So you can see it's quite open. It's a bit savanna-like. It's been highly managed because you can see that these are all terraces, so it's quite steep, and they're all fields. So this is all fields, open fields where people cultivated things. And now you can see it's completely changed. Everywhere where there were terraces and where it was cultivated before, now is forests. And everywhere where there were grazing animals is forest as well. What's interesting though is where there were trees on the big field, it's now completely clean. So what did change in those 50 years or 70 years more? So people in those 70 years got off the land because of industrialization, because they got drawn into the cities, because the land, it's what's quite hard to live on the land. And the government also wanted the people to go off the land. So they incentivized people to go off and to work in the cities. And so the land got desertified, in a way because no one was living there anymore. So when there was 50, 70 years ago, it was highly cultivated. So a lot of sheep everywhere, I guess a lot of burning to keep it open, a lot of overgrazing as well. And so there was a lot of soil loss at that time. So the government also decided to plant trees to get the erosion down. So, but what they didn't consider is that they took off the animals as well, because they planted the trees. They wanted the trees to flourish. And so they said, okay, no more animals on the land that could eat the trees. So they completely took off the animals as well. They even didn't allow any grazing anymore, which means that the forest took so much over that the understory got, there is no more understory. You'll see that in a few pictures now. And this means that erosion just continued. And the soil just kept on eroding and degrading. So a little bit what I've already explained. So they were burning a lot. And you can see here on this picture, this is my hand. And this is a root. So you can see how much soil is eroding, or you did erode that specific area, but it's pretty much everywhere. There was a lot of grazing, so everyone had animals, but very little size flocks, so for 40 to 50 sheep maybe. And what they did is they did herd on the top of the hills with the sheep or the goats or whatever. And then every night they put them into the sheep stall or to the stall to get the dung of the sheep to fertilize the terraces. What that did is that they transported the nutrients that were on top of the hill or on the hill down to the valleys. So not only with erosion, but also with the grazing, they transported all the nutrients and the good soil in a way. The fertility of the land got from top to bottom, not only with erosion, but also with the grazing practices. So this is when I'm herding, this is what I see. So you can see that they're huge terraces, and there's like no more understories, as you can see down there. It's only very high trees. And when I see those kind of images, I'm seeing a lot of potential that can be freed, because there were like 400 people living now in the village, and there were 4,000 people living there 70 years ago, which means that the land has much more potential to feed people, and to produce something other than well, bare soil, that this is what we're really trying to recreate here. So get more diversity in there, get the water cycle going, and regenerate the soil. I got that. Yes. So now that you got a little bit of the context, I'll talk about the strategies we are using to generate the soil. So our main tool is holistic planned herding, so herding and animals. These are very much our main tools, because with herding, we got high flexibility. If we would do parks, we couldn't utilize areas that we can utilize with herding. So it's much more flexible, and we get a better land utilization, because with it's so steep and so much brush and rocks that you can't, or you can probably maybe, but it's very much you would just put the sheep out there in big parks, and they would probably just utilize some areas, but would never go into others, because they like to do what they always do. So with the herding, we can force them in a way to utilize areas that they wouldn't utilize with being in big parks. There's also a precision impact, I call it that we are doing with a little bit like what they're doing in the Africa in the Center for Holistic Management in Africa. We're using, so like it's like crawls, but we're talking about night parks, because they sleep there, and we're using not like big structure, but just netting. And what we do is we herd them in the day, and at the night we close them on one area, in a specific area where we want some impact, high impact, for 3-4 days, maybe 5 and maybe 10, depending on and on what we want to achieve. So then we are switching this night park, and we will not put another night park on that specific area for a few years, so the land can regenerate again. So I'll already talk a little bit about those challenges, because herding it has a lot of positive and good sides. But so in this picture, there's like one sheep, and because we have a flock, I call them mavericks. They're all solo guys. So when you imagine herding in a steep forest, you can't really see your flock. So you don't really know if everyone is there. And when everyone isn't behaving and they don't have this instinct to stay together, you get a lot of sheep that just split from the herd and do their own life. So this is a challenge we have. Flock always was used to do what they want, so they got quite wild in a way. So it's hard to control them while herding, and it's very work and management intensive as well. So what we are doing right now is every time a group splits, we note every sheep, every number of every sheep, and we look if there are sheep that are doing that every time. We've already sorted out 3 specific sheep that were always splitting up, and it got a little bit better, but it's not perfect yet. So there's a bit of selection as well, and a bit of it's a lot of stock management, livestock management. But yes. So here you can see a little bit of how we are managing all of this and how we are creating those paddocks, so that the challenges of keeping the flock together and of herding become a bit less. So as you can see, this is it's quite steep. So I did mark the contours here that you can see how steep it is actually. And this is those red lines actually are the movement of the sheep. So it's a GPS that marked points. So here's one point, and then an hour later it marked another point, and then it drew a line. So one point is one movement, the sheep were there, and an hour later the sheep were there. Okay, so this is why it's straight lines like that. And what you can see is here is where they slept. So this is the night park. And then what you can see is that those lines they are moving in a way vertically to the contours. Only at, I mean, it's not perfect because the GPS is not working very perfectly. It's 1 hour and sometimes they're very fast, so it doesn't track all the movement. But here you can see that the sheep, we were sending them in that direction and they will walk like that. And then they will go up here. So you can see that there's a ridge here. So we use that ridge as a line, as a border for our paddock. We know that they will naturally go up on that ridge. No, it's not a ridge, sorry, a valley, a little valley. My English vocabulary. Stop me if I'm doing, if I'm not using the right words, Sheila.
You're doing great.
Okay, so when they go into a valley, so they walk up there, and then up you can send them back and send them back to the park in that way. So what you can do is you can more easily control them by using natural landscape or the natural landscape. So you don't have to send your dog that much all the time. So this is the tools we are using. And of course, you can see this is the ridge actually, that we can also use that as a line as a borderline to create our paddocks. And then you can see that we did our night park more or less also at the border of the paddock that we created. So we only sent them in that direction. Okay. So this is what I mean with high impact. So this is what I mean with the precision, the night parks. You can see here all those, in those two pictures, you can see 2 night parks that we did. This one was 4 days or 5, and this one was 3 days. Not very much apart, but you can see there's a lot of difference in the ground cover. So it's very interesting to see because you can really see that there was nothing on the ground. So it was only sand. And now you can see that it's covered in dung. So what's interesting is in this kind of soil, the soil got hydrophobic because it's so degraded. What that means is that when you pour on water on the soil, it just runs off. It's like a waxy shield on the top of the soil surface, and the water is not infiltrating at all. So it's very counterproductive, and it's happening, in my theory, it's happening because so there are bacteria that are protecting themselves from drought stress, from water stress. So they're creating a waxy shield around their bodies, which is protecting them, but in a way it's counterproductive because it's making the soil hydrophobic. And in my theory, it's because they've burned so much the land that the bacteria just developed this habit of protecting themselves on high heat and high moisture stress. Also the climate as well, but I guess the burning that didn't help. So, and what's interesting is after you've covered the soil with so much dung and you pour on water, it's infiltrating. It's infiltrating and it's not running off. So that's very, very well. And that's one means also because to change that with the bacteria, you need to change the biology. And because the land is so steep and you can't have, or it's very hard to have any inputs other than, so you can't just go on a tractor and put on compost or vermicast, for example, which would be great, but it's not very, very, very much possible. Maybe with a helicopter, but can't pay for that. So we use the sheep, and they change the biology. So with the dung, and they bring earthworms in, and then the earthworms can do their job and do the castings. So yeah, it works quite well. So what we're also using is landscaping. So while herding, we observe a little bit what's happening. And it's interesting to see when there's logs lying on the ground, and especially when the logs are lying perpendicular to the to the so on the contours, you can see that the soil and the leaves and a lot of organic matter, also stones, going against the trunk, and then it's forming a little bit of a terrace. And this is interesting. So we thought of why not doing the same while when we cut some trees and opening up some pastures, we use trees that are already there, that are planted on the contour, and we use the branches and we stick them in between those trees so that they can hold. And when then there's erosion or there's a lot of rain, because sometimes we get quite harsh rainstorms with 500 to 300 millimeters a day. So it's very, very much a lot of rain. Then this might slow the water flow and also stop the erosion, at least a little bit. So this is what we are using and what we are trying to do. We are also doing monitoring, of course. So we are doing our ecological monitoring. We would love to do EOV, but it's not yet developed. But we are really working with Sheila and Christopher to do that. We want to do that here. So right now I use at the beginning I used just sticks that I found on the ground just to monitor, and you can see there's a little plastic thingy sticking here, and then I marked it with GPS so I can find the exact spot again next year. This is where I did also the Haney tests in those 3 environments here, so you can see with my so this is what we're doing. This is our long time monitoring, and then we're also using the daily monitoring to look at the changes of what's happening on the soil after night park, what's happening on the plants, what's happening on the sheep. Did the area we gave the sheep on one day was enough, or do we have to give them a bigger space? So it's all those daily monitorings that we are doing that are very, very helpful. So what we are already observing with all those monitoring is some signs of change. This is a very beautiful environment where I took this picture because you can, it hasn't been grazed for 30, 40 years or something, but it didn't degrade. It did actually regenerate a lot more than other environments did. We don't really know why. Maybe people did do some mechanical work to keep it a bit open. Maybe because of the microclimate, it just regenerated very well. But it's a lot of diversity here, and it's well, just wanted to say it's a very beautiful environment. So this is something we've already done. So this is what there was before. Then what we used is, so I did use mechanical intervention because quite hard to do that other than maybe with pigs, but we don't have pigs at the moment. So I did with mechanical intervention, and we put our horse on there because what we've observed is she's a bit heavy, and well, grazing doesn't. It's quite hard because horses can be very harsh on grass. She, for example, is even sometimes so harsh that she's eating the roots of the plants. So you have to be careful. But she's very heavy, so she's really trampling down those rose bushes, the rest from the things that I've shredded down. She's really trampling it on the ground and giving it a lot of contact with the soil, so the biological degradation is really working very well. And then we did use some cover cropping here, and it really grew quite well. So there was a very cool thing. And right now it's also developing quite well. This is what you can see what the night parks is also doing. I don't know what's happened on there. It's been maybe 2 months that we haven't been there, so I haven't been checking on it yet. So I will be very interested on what's happened here, but you can see that there's a lot of, in French, it's called fougère. I don't know in English, fern, I think.
Yeah, we would call it bracken.
Bracken? Okay.
Yes.
So this is a plant that loves burning, by the way, and I guess high potassium as well. So this is why it's there actually, because it's been burned a lot. And so what we did is we did a night park. This is before the night park and this is after the night park, which you can see the sheep really trampled it down very well. And there's no close-up, but there's a lot of dung on the ground as well. So very excited to see what will happen to that. This picture you've already seen, but what you haven't seen is, so this is the same place. It's just this picture is taken from above and this picture is taken from below. And so what I did is mechanical intervention, and we put the sheep on there for 3 nights, and we used bale grazing in a way. We didn't put out bales, but I distributed the hay by hand, and I put the hay on the roses, so the sheep were focusing their attention on the hay and putting a lot of pressure on the shrubs then, which is very useful. It's a lot of work to put the hay out, but afterwards it's very well because I don't have to shred mechanically anymore. So it's balancing itself out in a way. And this is what you can see what's afterwards. And now a few months later, there's a lot of clover and a lot of grasses coming up that haven't been there before. So it's very quickly actually the how the land is responding in some areas. So that's very cool. Here as well, it's a thing what we observed is we had those little, so you can see those patches of grass everywhere, and then we did use animals, so they grazed it down, and now after the grazing there's clover coming up in between those patches and other grasses. Here you can see some other stuff, I forgot what it's called, but we don't really care what it is, as long as it is covering our soil. It's those patches, there's a lot of life coming up, so that's really cool as well.
Well, Lennart, we have a question.
Go ahead.
On the previous slide where you had roses, are those really roses or are they brambles?
No, I think bramble. I say roses because it's in French, it's roses, but I think
I
it's
looked
brambles.
up in French, brambles are ronces.
Exactly. So it's exactly that. Exactly.
Yeah.
So
yeah. So it is brambles. Thank you.
Thank you for the question. Yes. And this got me very excited. This picture. This is also a night park. And what you can see here, this spot is here. I did a little close up, and I was very excited because it's so dense. There's so much density on this spot, and I haven't seen that much density there before at all, and in this environment. And what you can also see is that there's also clover and other legumes coming up, which is also very exciting because I didn't observe one legume species in the whole area, and it was maybe 200 hectares or something, and I didn't observe one legume species. So very excited to see them coming up that quickly, just after some impact and some biology. So that's very cool. This is a observation that I wanted to show you that was a learning, because so what we did is we did use a night park again, but it was quite steep and it didn't rain for 2 months. So it was the soil is you can't really see it, but it's very, very sandy, and it just blew away. So what I've observed is that with the night park, I had the feeling that the sheep were pushing down because the soil was so sandy, they were pushing down the soil, and that it wasn't really helpful to have a night park on a steep area when it was very dry. So we quickly changed them to a area where it's less steep. But then I had a second look, and I've took out the soil where they slept and put it next to the soil where they didn't sleep. and you can still see it's quite dark brown and full of sheep dung and a lot of more of organic matter than where they didn't sleep. So maybe it was still beneficial. So this is something that I have also to observe in the next year. How did it respond? Did it respond very well, or wasn't it the right treatment at the right time? So still a lot of learnings to come. So it's not over yet, and this is the summary. So what we are doing is just planning, monitoring, controlling, and replanning. So this is really what we are all about as well, to trying to give back the potential to the land, yes, and to the people as well. So thank you for listening, and I hope you've got a lot of questions. I think I'm just in time. So yeah, go ahead, Sheila.
Yeah, that was wonderful. Let's have you stop sharing, and then we can see ourselves better. There were a few questions, and I'll ask. The first one was, what kind of trees were planted?
They did use a lot of chestnuts, but they didn't plant them. So the chestnuts they are already there. So what they did is they put the chestnuts for eating on them. So I don't know what it is called in English, greffe in French. It's when you put the branches on the tree, so the new tree comes the right.
Grafting.
Grafting. So they did grafting with that chestnuts, and then they used you told me the species in English that they used to produce silk, because there was a lot of silk production because the water.
Right.
Mulberry.
Mulberry, yeah.
Yes. So they did use mulberries, and in the region there is a famous apple tree as well. So they plant apple trees, cherries as well. They did plant cherry trees and some other fruit. So these are the main trees that they were using.
Great. Next question is, do you think that the legume seeds, you said legumes sprouted. Do you think the seeds came from the hay, or do you think they were already in the soil and got stimulated by the grape?
I think they were already in the soil, because first the hay that I'm buying is not the very good hay, and there's no clover in the hay. In some areas where the legumes are sprouting, I didn't put out any hay, so it's coming up from itself.
Okay, and what breed of sheep do you use?
Yes, I didn't mention that. It's Rayol. It's Rayol. It's a French. It's a very local breed, and they are very hardy. And they are very well adapted to the environment. They've been bred there for hundreds of years, I guess. I don't know how many years, but it's a very ancient breed, so it's a very old breed. And we are very happy about them in a way, because they're really they're very low maintenance, so they don't need a lot of quality food to be in good shape, but their character is a bit you have to work on that. But otherwise they're very, very well. So good sheep for the environment, definitely.
And are you able to sell their wool in addition to meat?
Yes, we can. And that's what we're wanting to do. That's what we want to do as well. We want to put some value on the wool. They've already done that, because the wool it's quite good. It's not merino, so it's not the finest quality, but it's a good hardy wool, a bit like the English breed, I guess. And you can do sweaters with it, you can do hats with it. So it's a little bit, it's not itchy, but it's not like fine merino stuff, but it's not itchy, and it keeps you very warm. So it's very good for clothing as well. Maybe not t-shirts, but for sweaters it's perfect.
And what do you do for water? And do you have water challenges for the sheep?
Depends. Most of the time, so right now we don't have any water challenges, because actually the this area is very interesting because you have a lot of natural sources. So in most of those valleys, you have a little river, like not a river, but a little stream flowing down. And so this is also what we use for our paddock creation, is we look where there are water points, and then we go from there. So we can, while herding, you just herd them to the water, you know. So it's not like that we have to bring them, because you can just bring the sheep to the water. Sometimes, especially this summer was a bit harder because they all dried out, and then we had to bring that to the sheep. So what we're using is we use a hose that we are putting on a roller, and that we can roll out 100 meters, and then there's a tank on the truck, and then we can pump the water or up hills, or we can just gravity flow it down hills, depends on where the sheep are sleeping. And this is very good because it's very mobile, and then we can just roll the hose up again, and it goes up and down 100 meter, more or less.
Okay, so good. Lots of questions are coming in now, and let's go to Hugh. Hugh, you've got your hand raised. If you want to unmute and ask your question, go ahead.
Thanks, Sheila. Thanks, Lennart. That was a really good talk, and sounds really interesting. That I was, without knowing your background to farming and how you came into it and the project, I'm just kind of trying to read between your aims of regenerating land, but also it seemed like you've got lots of potentially conservation stuff going on as well, lots of diversity. And I'm always really curious when people talk about regenerating land throughout the world in different regions, and why sometimes there's a focus on reducing things like bramble or some thorn species and things like that. And I guess each context is different within the region, but I spend a lot of time navigating between farming and conservation, trying to keep a balance of both, and measuring things like bird life and butterflies and species like that coming back. Are you monitoring biodiversity across the whole area you manage, as well as just the soil regeneration?
Not yet, as we don't monitor yet as much as I would like to. So I hope this will come with the EOV.
Okay.
What's interesting is that you've mentioned what we don't want is eradicate something. So we like the bramble, actually.
Yeah.
Just that sometimes it's so thick that that it's smothering everything else. So it's like we just want to free up the space for anything else to come up, but also we want to preserve areas where there is this bramble, because it's such a good feed, especially for winter.
Yeah.
We are lacking a lot in proteins, and in winter it stays green. So it's a high protein. It's not high protein, but it's a good protein feed for the sheep and the goats in winter, definitely. So we don't want to. We just want to keep it in a way that it's not smothering everything else.
Sure. Okay, thanks for that. Cheers.
Thank you, Hugh. Do you herd all year round?
Yes. No, so we don't have any fixed parks. So this is why it's very work intensive, because we do it every day, all year round. So it's and we're two, so we can alternate, but we don't have any. So yeah, it's very work intensive. But what's good with it is it can be scalable, because one herder can herd maybe 1,500 sheep or something. So right now it's not very scaled up, because one herder is herding 180 sheep, but maybe in a few years we can scale it up, and we can have more sheep with the same amount of people, and maybe get more people, because it's very tiresome as well.
How many hours a day do you spend working?
Working or herding?
Well, working. And you can include the herding in there.
I don't know, 10, 11, something like that.
Mm-hmm. And then of
Right.
that, how much is actually doing herding?
Depends on the season. Now in winter time, it's for 5 to 6 hours.
Hmm.
In summertime, it's 8 hours, maybe 7. In springtime, it's also 8 to 9 hours, and in autumn as well, 8 to 9 hours. So it depends a bit on the season. In winter, it's a bit easier because it's getting darker soon, and yeah, you just want to have a little winter break, so you don't. The sheep also, everything slows a bit down. Even if the sheep are running, for example, today they just one herd just split off and ran somewhere else. So so they are running, but you don't have to herd them so much. As in spring, for example, it's longer days. It's still cool, so the sheep are not heat stressed, and they just eat a lot. So depends on the season.
Got it. Now, a question they're wondering is, what's the landscape structure that you are aiming for? Are you aiming for a mosaic of meadow and woods, or more of a wooded pasture, like a savanna? What's the aim for your landscape?
I guess it depends a little bit on the landscape, but I'm always looking for maybe for a mosaic kind of structure, but it depends, because when it's very steep, I'd really like to see like erosion controlling in a way with those trees and the contours. I'd really like to see that, so that you can see the tree lines on the contour line with those branches in between, which would also help for not only for the water flowing down, but because we have a lot of wild boars. This is pretty much the wildlife we have. There's not much else but wild boars, and they are really turning the soil over a lot, which is sometimes not bad, but sometimes it really doesn't help because it can't rest enough for other things to grow up. And when you have those branches, they might stop the boars from running downhill too fast, so they more like flow with the contour as well, and not be so much destructive.
Are you allowed to hunt the boars and sell them?
I could be, but I don't want to hunt. So I could, yes, but only so hunting season is from September to end of February. So there you can hunt them, but I'm not a hunter, and I don't have the time or the energy for it. So neither the passion.
Got it.
So,
So another question about time is, so do you, like, you said you don't have to shepherd them all day, every day. So what happens to them when you're not with them?
No, all day, every day. So we are shepherding every day. So it's really every day, not the whole day, but every day. So what's happening when we're not with them is what I explained. So they're in the night park. So they're sleeping in those, or sleeping or resting, ruminating, whatever should do when they're alone. They're in the closed area. So we use nettings. I don't know if you saw that in the pictures. It's electric nets, and we put them around the sheep, and then they stayed there, hopefully.
Do you have any government support?
Yes, we've got government support. What's interesting in this region is, or not only this region, I guess it's in the whole Europe, France, is, for example, here the shepherds, they have so when you look at their balance sheet at the end of the year, they had maybe, I don't know, there was one shepherd that had 4,000 on selling their lambs of income. So in the whole year, 4,000 euros of production in a year of 4,000, like nothing, and he had 40,000 government subsidies.
Wow.
So it's very disproportionate, because you've got the landscape is very difficult, so you get a lot of extra money for the difficulty, if you like. So I can also have a lot of subsidies for this kind of for this landscape. I get a lot of subsidies. What I'm trying to do is, so it's our first year, so I'm not really productive yet. So we don't have a lot of cash flow, and the first year we couldn't get the government subsidies as well, so we don't have anything. But in the next year we will get subsidies, and what we were trying to do is we want to do our production needs to cover, so the farm isn't dependent on the subsidies, and then I can use the subsidies to invest in new projects in other land, maybe in other people, and in land generation. So this is what I'm aiming for, is that the farm is sustaining itself, and then I can use those subsidies for investment in the land.
Okay, I just put a link in there to your fundraiser. Would you just explain what you're raising money for and a little bit about that?
I'm not very good in selling, but
it's okay.
And I'm also not very comfortable, but I have to get there. So, anyways, so we are trying to raise some money because we need some support for buying a bit more sheep, and also for because as I told you, I'm managing 600 hectares, which is quite vast. It's not, I mean, for some people it's not big, but for Europe I think it's quite big. And as we are only 2 people, I can't really do everything by myself. So I'm looking for some investment to help, or to get people that can help me to open up a bit of those dense forests, to get some diversity in there. So this is also an aim for the fundraising.
Okay. And you mentioned people in the landscape. Is a part of your project encouraging education of people? Oh, I just lost it. Where did it go? Is it encouraging education, skill sharing, or helping people return to the land?
Yes. So this is also what I want. So I'm already starting a project with that. So I want to give, for example, managers the chance to get back in touch with nature. So I want to do in a way a leadership program for managers to educate them on leadership, because herding sheep and leading is you've got a lot of similarities, because you've got the synergy between you, the dog, and the sheep. So the leader, the sheep are the workers in a way, and the dog as the manager. So you've got all those comparisons that you can use, and doing that on the land, actually bringing them back to the land, bringing them back out in nature, I think can help a lot of people as well. So this is something I want to do. And why not? I'd love to do in the later stages of our farm also to get more people on the land. So why not get people that want to create chestnuts, so that want to do chestnuts harvesting, or want to plant cherry trees, or want to do pigs, or want to do shiitake mushrooms, whatever comes to mind, get people out there, get them working. There's so much space, so much to do, that there's a lot of things for people to do. So this is something that I'd like to do as well. And also why not in the future create a little school for herders, to get more people herding, and to get them educated on not only herding traditionally, but holistic herding. So yeah, definitely.
We've got a lot of questions left, and I'm going to insert my own question, and we'll have time. We'll stay longer for anybody who wants for the remaining questions. My question relates to, I think, a common perception people have of herding and shepherding is that it must be very boring, and what a boring job. And so people can't imagine that it's a profession or something that people want to pursue. And I'd like to ask, what have you observed about yourself? How have you changed or grown, or what have you learned through being a shepherd? And what would your advice be to others? Do you think it's a career, a profession to pursue?
Definitely. Yes, it is a profession to pursue. If it's so what I've learned over the years of shepherding, I think the first thing I've learned was to slow down and to listen, to listen. Because so it's quite funny. The first shepherd I worked with, he always told me to. So he was in French. He was telling me always, Lennart, stop. There's no fire. So it's like, I guess it's a bit of the shepherd mentality to just slow down a little bit and yeah, just listen, not only to people but to everything, to the landscape, to observe, to the animals, to just the sound of the grass when the wind is flowing through, to the insects. So just listening. I think this is what I've learned and what I came to appreciate while shepherding a lot. I mean, I've learned a lot more, but this is just the first thing that comes to mind, I guess, while imagining the really the moments that influenced me in a way the most were the moments where I just could stop and just listened, just be there, just like in the moment, being there. I think that those were the most influencing moments. So definitely I can recommend it, but maybe do it before rushing into it. We go with someone shepherd before and find out if it works for you, because it can be quite harsh as well. It's not always listening. Sometimes it's running, and there's hail, and then there's a storm, and then there's fog, and then there's whatever. So you're out in nature, so you're really in the elements. So that's cool.
Yeah,
it's cool, but it's cool. Yeah.
Do you lamb them out on the hill, and what's that like?
Yes, so we don't have any infrastructure besides the nets. So what we are using, so the only infrastructures we have, right now we are using the old barn from the shepherd as to stock a little bit of hay, and we are going to do like a thing to stock, to put out and to put the hay inside and the material, but the sheep are always outside. And what we are doing with lambing is we have some areas that are somehow flat, and in those areas we can put them in nets. So we're using those areas for lambing, because when you're herding and lambs are the sheep stay behind, and sometimes you would just lose them because you wouldn't notice them lambing, because they would just stay behind, do their lamb, and then you lose them. So it's much more easier to keep them in a paddock, and also the food is a bit more nutritious in those fields, even if it's not very big, but it's enough for the moment. So this is what we are doing for lambing, and so we've did it a little bit different as well. We split a herd. So lambing is in April to May. So when the grass is getting good growth, and we will split one herd. So we will do one herd that's already have some that had the lambs already for a bit longer, and one herd that is still into lambing. And the one herd that is still into lambing will be in the big field where it's easy for us. And the smaller herd will go into the very little. So there's a lot of little paddocks, like a lot of little terraces where we can park them, but we just can park a few sheep, not a lot of sheep. And they're all dispersed everywhere. So we have like a little mobile flock with lambs that we can move, utilizing the little areas and the bigger area with the bigger flock. So we can somehow, manage that like that. We'll see how it works. First
And great. I'm so glad to hear you're able to lamb like that. And I bet you're just learning so much. A question about community. Do you have a community of herders and shepherds around you? Are there others trying to do what you're doing? And then related question was, are you involved in the European Shepherds Network or the Shepherd School in the Pyrenees?
So I'd love to have a community. I don't. We have a lot of neighbors that are shepherding, but that are not really accepting us yet. Maybe they will later. So it's not easy because it's like the scarcity. I guess it's the scarcity syndrome. They are scared of not having enough for them, so they I don't know. Anyways, so it's not that easy with the neighbors. Yes, I so I'm not involved in the. I don't even know about the European Shepherd. Would love to get in touch, so that's cool. But I know I've heard of the Pyrenees Shepherd School. I'm not really in contact with them. I'm more in contact with the school that we did, is the Shepherd School in Salon de Provence. It's not that far from Marseille. This is the Shepherd School where I went to. So I have a bit more connection to this one than to the one in the Pyrenees. So.
Very good. Now, a simple question. Why don't you use electric fencing to make it easier for yourself when you're trying to group them up?
When I'm trying to group them up?
Yeah. The question is, why don't you use electric fencing?
As for herding?
Yeah, instead of herding. Yep.
Because of the environment. If I would need to do a park and an electric fence, the sheep at the moment, they eat maybe 1.5 or 2 hectares per day. So this is how much space they need, because this is how degraded it is. There's nothing. Right now they are eating chestnuts and acorns and maybe some little grasses right there and there, but there's like a lot of background. So I would need to do huge parks, which would take me maybe a whole day, and the terrain is very, very, very steep sometimes, and very, very, very rocky sometimes, that it would be very difficult to do that, to do parks. And I could do fixed parks, but the thing is, it would need a lot of maintenance also, because of rocks falling on it, because of leaves falling on it, because of heavy rains, because of wild boars, because of a lot of things that will destroy those fixed parks. So with netting, it's nearly impossible, because I sometimes need 1 hour for one net, and one net is 50 meters. So it takes a lot of time, because it's so annoying. You take up every branch, you take up every stone with your net. So it takes a long time sometimes to put up one net. We could use maybe three wires, or maybe 3 wires, but they are so not trained to that they just walk through it like it's nothing, even if there's a lot of electricity on there. So it still needs a lot of training. In some areas, I could maybe use 3 wires, but yeah, I still need to train them on that. So it's like they don't even see the wires. It's like they just walk through it, even if there's a lot, like 7,000 volts on it, so something gone. Bye. So it's challenging with electric fences.
Yeah, thank you for that. If you mix goats and sheep together, does that create issues with worms?
Not that I've noticed. So we had some issues with worms at the beginning. What we did is so the issues came from because they were in a very moist sheep stall, and then they were in a night park for 15 days, so a long time. So I guess this is where the parasite came from in a way. And then when we started to manage the flock, we gave them a lot of garlic, and we did put them into places where they were in sheep for a long time, and goats. And we did 3 or 4 testings for parasites, and they just went down gradually. So for the moment, I don't have any. We didn't do anything else yet. So we did one time a garlic treatment, and that's it. And no issues so far. But I think it's a quite hardy breed as well. So, and the goats that we use also a local goat breed, also quite hardy. I guess for the moment we don't observe any problems with that.
Okay, and then Durukan, he's asking this question. He started the Turkish hub, and now he's working with the Nordic hub in Sweden. And he said, we have done exactly the same trial last summer here in Sweden with kid goats. It took me 6 to 8 hours a day of grazing and outside the night parks. How many hours does it take you for the grazing, and how many rounds per day? He's wondering how long it takes for their rumen to get filled up in southern France and the landscape that you're in. And he says it was really great, and he's going to follow you and get in contact with you.
Cool. I've already met you, Durukan, in where was it? The first holistic management meeting we've met.
Oh, right. Was that in California?
White Oak Pastures.
Oh, White Oak Pastures,
yes.
Right. Yeah.
Anyways, so it depends also. Depends, yes, best answer. Depends on the season, and depends on the quality of the grass and the pasture and what's on the ground. They can fill up their rumen in 4 hours when it's very high quality. When there's a lot, 4 hours they can fill up their rumen. They eat very, very quickly, as it can take up to 8 hours. Depending on what's on the ground and what season it is. So right now they can fill up in 6 hours because there are a lot of acorns, and acorns are very high in lipids and in energy. So that really helps to fill it up, and then so it can get quite quickly. With the chestnuts, it was even quicker. They were even higher in proteins and a lot bigger. So they got filled up in 5 hours.
Wow.
And sometimes in spring, when there's no more chestnuts, no more acorns, which is really one of the richest foods we have here, it can take a bit longer because there's not much grass or not much new spring growth. This is so in March it can be maybe 8 hours to fill them up. So it depends a little bit.
I think there's one more question here. It says, in the GPS map you showed, and in my experience, you could see quite clearly that the sheep were not descending from the night camp. They always prefer to contour or to climb. Have you tried finding night camps that are lower in your grazing area?
Very good observation. Interesting that you've seen that in the in the thing. But yes, it's really like that. They like to climb. Interesting is usually when we go up. So we are doing in when we go up in the mountains. The sheep naturally, when you leave them, they look for the highest point. They look for the highest point on the pasture, and then they graze there, and then yeah, they're happy there. So they're always looking for the highest spot. So yes, sometimes we try to do the night bucks a bit lower. It's not always possible. Sometimes it's too steep, sometimes it's just no access, and it's very hard to carry the nets everywhere. So we also have to look for possible locations where we can do it. And also it's also good for the sheep sometimes, or not, maybe not good for them, but it's also interesting to send them down in the morning. You send them downhill. So in the morning you leave you open the park, you send them downhill. They will go downhill, and they are more comfortable going downhill when the rumen is empty. And then they eat a little bit walking down. They will run a little bit running down. But then you can send them. Then they can, when you've run down enough, you can send them up, and then it's very, very much easier for the rest of the day, because they will take longer to get to the highest point, and the rumen is already a bit filled, so they are comfortable walking up, much more than walking down, and they don't run as much anymore. So this is also what you can do. You can send them down at the beginning, and then they just, sometimes you just don't have to do anything anymore. You're just walking up naturally. So it's less stress also for the dogs.
Okay, one more here. Really inspiring. Well done. Wishing you success in your venture. Can we please come and visit you from Scotland? We visited the Cévennes several times back in the 1990s and can't believe how much it has changed.
Wow. That would be interesting. Yeah, definitely come. Everyone is welcome. But one thing is, so we are not in the Cévennes from June to October, because we are doing, so we are very mobile. So from June to October, we look for grass in the higher mountains. So we're doing the transhumant. I don't know, in English it's
transhumance. Yep.
We are going to the
word.
higher in the Alps. So from June to October, we are in the Alps. And then from October to June, we are in the Cévennes.
You remind me when Christopher first met you in London on that first training. He came home that night and he said, one of the people in our class, I asked him to draw me a map on the France showing where he is. And he goes, in any given day, I can be somewhere in these 400 kilometers. Oh my goodness. Well, thank you so much, Lennart. This has been really fantastic. And I have more questions to ask you, but I'm going to do a little advertising now. And I want to encourage people to consider donating. And I put the link in. But the reason being that he's not getting his subsidy just yet, and he's got to survive a bit longer, and he wants to make investment in here. So if you would like to support that, please do. And of course, we offer courses in holistic management, and we've got a couple of new series coming up. There's a new series starting in March and a new series starting in May. We do both online and in person. We've got one coming up in March at FarmEd, and then we've got one coming up in Lismore in October. So these will be in-person ones. And please do sign up for our newsletter. And you will get a free ebook called The Foundations of Holistic Management. And I want to thank you all for being with us. I'm going to ask you one more question. What would be your words of advice to somebody who wanted to follow in your footsteps?
a word of advice for someone that wants to start follow masters. Yeah, maybe a little bit like the answer I've already given at the beginning. But maybe it depends on the character of the person as well. Maybe they're already there, but listen, slow down and listen, I guess. But depends, maybe they're already there, and then it might be a different advice.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you so much, Lennart. We really appreciated it, and we wish you all the best as you continue regenerating the land in France.
Thank you so much also for helping me and for giving me the opportunity. And thank you everyone for being there and for finding it, well, for giving me your time and finding it interesting.
Yeah.
Cool.
Bonne soirée, tout le monde. Thank you.
See you.